Qatar-based climate activist Neeshad Shafi has helped to put the Arab world's plans for climate change at the forefront of this year's COP27 in Egypt.
COP27 is our chance for the Middle East countries to enhance their climate action. I'm Nishad Shafi, founder of Arab Youth Climate Movement Qatar. I work around young people in building climate change awareness and advocacy.
He's a climate change leader with a difference, and Nishad's positive approach is inspiring a new generation of climate advocates.
The world will survive and take necessary actions against climate change, but only if we do that collectively.
Nishad, it's great to have you on the dialogue. Can we start by taking us right back to your childhood and tell us a bit more about how that period of your life informed the person you are today?
Leaving me in the hostels and at the, more like in boarding schools gave me a set of idea of real life looks like. You're independent or your own, and it tended to help me to be who I am because I was so independent from a very young age, doing my own stuff over the years until I graduated from university. And also living with enormous diverse students from across India and across the world who used to come to study transformed me from cultural values and to have a sort of cultural integration. That was something I learned at a very young age.
And Nishad, you're a scientist turned activist, a bit different to many activists that we meet. Do you think that activism itself is having a tough time at the moment? I mean, some of the critics of activists say that activism is just about telling other people what to do.
What you ask others is not just asking the community to change, but you're looking at larger course of system change, where you're asking respective corporates and government to act at a very fast pace. But again, you come up with a real substantial knowledge telling how we can do it and how far we can go at this pace. So you don't have to be very rhetoric of just take climate action, else we are all doomed. No, that doesn't work. We have to come with a real knowledge, real science, real solution. I mean, that's what the real role of an activism or activist should look like.
Can I ask you a personal question? So you do all of this work. You're such a passionate fighter against climate change. You take climate action very seriously. What do you personally, Nishad, get out of doing this work?
Well, this passion didn't just came overnight. This came because of the vacuum of not having young people from the Arab world at global conversations. It is important that representation from this region is also part of the conversation because the whole climate change issue is a global. And if they don't know the stories from our part of the world, which is one of the most impacted by climate change, I think you're leaving a big segment of young people from the region. So I think that was a big push on that, and I took that as a challenge because you have to fight the mainstream global North youth movement to put your mark there. And I wouldn't say I was successful 100%. To a person of 50, I would say I did try to put that mark of an Arab youth leading an organization at the global level. I believe there has been a notion of, there is a sort of a rift between the global North youth movement and the global South. Of course, because if you look at the whole climate movement, the global North movement looks more privileged and more getting supports in terms of finance or capacity building. Unlike the South, where the climate impacts are far greater impact, but still they don't get the funding to do any programs very locally. And the whole grassroots movements are very initial stage of their starting. If they don't get the right support, they will not even survive. When I got to attend the COP21 in Paris, when I had the discussion there, I understood that young people were in part of the climate conversation, like it was all whitewashed by the global North.
This country, this region is very dear to your heart, isn't it? But I think you also see it as key, don't you, as being successful as a planet in the battle against climate change.
Of course, this region is one of the worst impacted by climate change. You take it as the temperature, you take it the water, you take it the growing young population. If they are not met with the right sort of green jobs in the coming years, right sort of transition is not done, the whole survival of this region will be jeopardized. I mean, this is not Nishad telling, it's what IPCC, which is the globally accepted climate science by all the governments, which is IPCC, tells that the region will be inhabitable in the coming decade. Reverting climate change and to working against the destruction of our nature, young people around our community are working to drive change.
if you look at the predictions for the science, I mean, it's not good, is it? You know, I mean, you could say we're all doomed anyway. So what's the point? You know, when you look at the science, how do you remain so optimistic?
Well, humanity always survived challenges in the past, and that came only doing collective things. At the moment, we are living in a very differentiated world. Country looks at their own priority, a large far-right movements happening, a much divided world than what it used to be. But what I feel is there is a big human factor where people want to work collectively. At least the bunch of people who I work always wanted to work beyond their nations, beyond their culture, beyond their any differences, want to come together for climate action. And I found this movement as very collective. And one of the strongest bound because most of this movement are done or been led by young people. And that gives me a big optimism because these young people would be the citizens of the world in the coming years.
So many people, quite rightly, see you as a source of inspiration, Nishad, but who inspires you?
I drew inspiration from a lot of elderly activists and advocates from Global South, Latin America, who've been doing extraordinary grassroots works, from Vandana Shiva to Satish Kumar. All of the people who comes to my mind when I think of the elderly ones who achieved through non-violent activism to bring changes in the community. And moving towards the new era of youth activism, one of the person I personally acknowledge is Greta Thunberg, who brought the attention of the world to climate and making sure she pulled out the countries and leaders accountable for what they've been doing. Our movement started long back before Greta Thunberg started her own movement. Of course, the phase they went was faster because most of their movements are based in the global north. Unlike us in the global south, it takes time to pledge your arms, get support, funding, etc.
Now, I was a bit of an awkward teenager. I don't know what a teenage Nishad was like, but if you could go back and speak to a 16-year-old version of yourself, what advice would you give to him?
Well, I tend to be a very naughty guy when I was very young. I wish if I go back to myself 16, I would start my activism at the age of 16. That would give me more time to work with young people and more space to work with young people and more space to expand my activism. That would be something I would look when if you ask my own 16 now, to start activism at the age of 16 rather than 25 when I started.
So from naughty stuff to saving the planet one day at a time. Nishad, it's been a great pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us on The Dial.
Thank you, Guy. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you.